we go. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Building an advanced civilization in the sight of God. I don't know how many human beings are talking about this, but as someone who So, I guess I'm that human being who is in some sense deciding to see the parallels. For example, two things that are being parallel now, they intersect in the future. And what that is the secular idea of a system administrator and the religious idea of God, the creator. I believe the future generations, what's going to happen is as technology exponentially advances, technology is going to very soon become the most incredible convenience for mankind. People think a surveillance state is something bad, but you don't realize that there are different ages, there are different, how would I say it? For example, a surveillance state for a modern people, a surveillance state that is impure. I pretty much divide them between that. And the purer it is, eventually it becomes a divine surveillance state. Take care. Excuse me. The purer it becomes like a divine surveillance state. So what I'm telling you, dear human beings, is that we have so many blind spots. We legit have so many blind spots that we need backup systems everywhere, to be honest. But in reality, prior to us even knowing, the core backup system is the divine surveillance state. And the divine surveillance state is how what we don't know is known by that which is beyond what we don't know. So so here's the idea. I'm pretty much saying you go to someone's house, they're like the system administrator of the house. Now imagine you appeared in some random house. You're like, who owns this house? Now imagine instead of a house, it is at the scale and size of a world. And so you're like, who owns this world? And then you realize the owner is beyond the house. The house can't go anywhere, but the owner can go anywhere. So the notion is that the owner I'm looking for something, hang in there. So you'd wonder about the owner, right? Now me and you have suddenly found ourselves in a world, in a place that we didn't create. There was stuff going on before we were born. There was a sophistication unknown, even we cannot know it, what happened before we were born. What does this mean? This means you open your eyes in a system that is not of your making. First, recommendation: don't freak out. Reality is not meant to make sense. It may make sense, but that is a privilege. 2, we're in some system. Let's call it existence. Existence is a system. Now, this system has an admin. Now, we know that there's an admin. Now, let's take an example of a system. For example, a system I have an experience of is Discord, right? So I created a Discord server, and then there were members who joined, and then there were moderators. I appointed those who were the most participant, like it became moderators, right? Now, something interesting happened. One day, one of the moderators said something and acted in such a way that they acted like an administrator to one of the members in the group. And I came and checked that situation out, and I came and eventually I contacted, like, how do I say it? What I'm saying is, the moderator was not the administrator. The administrator had an authority, a power, a capability, a decree, a command. You know, the moderator could act like an administrator. The administrator was the administrator. So for me, for many people, they have made God seem like, oh my God, you believe in Santa Claus? You know? And that's freaking nonsense. What do you mean Santa Claus? It's a system. You go to work, your boss of your office is a system admin, right? The children who's born and the parents are in some sense taking care of everything. That's a system. They are the system admin. We are in a game of constant administration cycles, right? So it makes sense that if all that we've known is administration, whether the self is administering it's what it owns, or whether leaders of nations are administering what happens to nations. So let's not act like we're strangers to being inside a system and being experiencing the system admin component. So I started by how would I say it? I mean, this is my view. I don't know if you're convinced, but this is my view, that I'm not on an empty rock spinning in the middle of nowhere anymore. I am in a place where there are intelligent interaction levels. What that means is the purpose of life is not for you to just have a successful physicality and a successful psychology. Those are very important. Those make it smoother, right? But let me tell you why. It's not just that. Because there are inevitabilities. The body realizes that it's temporary, doesn't know what to do. And the mind, while it's in the conscious waking state, having no problem with disappearing during deep sleep, but still, let's avoid that. Let's forget about that and come back to, okay, what can the mind do? And the mind has access to an infinite perceptions. To infinite perceptions. What does that mean? That means, what does the body do with the temporary? What does the mind do with infinity? Which way do I look at? So the mind is trapped in a labyrinth and the body is trapped on an island. Do you know? The soul. Why is it important for one human being to speak to other human beings about the soul? Because if we don't acknowledge what we are fooling ourselves. So, building an advanced civilization in the sight of God. This is equivalent to me being inside of this, creating a Discord server, right? And and a member in the Discord server, right, acknowledges the moderators but doesn't believe in the system admin, has had no contact with the system admin, and then the members like, I don't like this system I'm in, I don't like this Discord server, I'm gonna change everything, and I'm gonna communicate to all the members so that we together come and change the system. And meanwhile, the moderators are like, yo, this is good entertainment. And at the same time, the admin from a distance who's seen it all is like, yo, what are these? What the hell's going on here? So for me, in my efforts to advance civilization, I was that human in history last year. I sincerely was that person wanting to build an advanced civilization. But I began to realize I am not that superior of a rank. Do you know what that means? That means God was greater. I was too busy trying to fulfill the wish of my future self, not realizing putting my attention on my future self was an act of self-worship. Self-worship, or worshiping others, or worshiping an object or subject, these are all idol worship. When I say purity, it's the purity of an allegiance to the one and only. You see, this is what I was missing, but I forgot. I remembered in my childhood that I was raised in that era. I was as a human being born in 1991. It's so fascinating. I feel like, an elder of civilization. Why? Because I see it. I saw both worlds, and now one world is forgotten and we're in the other one. I'm that kid who climbed trees and also played PlayStation till like 2 a.m. with his cousins when he was young. Do you know what that means? That means right that transition point of man having a very harmonious relationship with world and others. And now that technology has come, man does not have a harmonious relationship with others. And because he does not have a harmonious relationship with others, the attitude is a sort of alert vibe. What technology has done is it has given our minds an ability to see what we're missing out on. Do you know what it means to be a sci-fi novelist? Do you know what it means to look at something that exists now and in some sense be as if I had no choice? How would I fathom the destiny of this single shape in manifestation in a span of like 5,000 years? In one of my sci-fi novels, the first one I wrote called The Messenger of Giants, it was set in the year 5025. And what was going on there was that civilization was divided between the futurists and the traditionalists. And the traditionalists were all those people who believed in time, and the futurists were all those beings who were classified as timeless. This included AI programs, this included extraterrestrials, this included divine presences. My first sci-fi novel, I was like releasing all dimensions of my fathomability. So, building an advanced civilization in the sight of God was like a member in a system, trusting the moderators and going forth. Now, I'll be honest, guys. I have had a complete transformation since last year. I gave a talk last year and I said 2023 is going to be an incredible year, and I didn't know it was going to be this incredible. Do you know what it is? I feel I have found a lost kingdom that I belong to. Do you see? I feel I have found the king I was looking for to serve. And the archetype is not of a king, it is of that which is beyond the world. So if somebody comes up to me and says, Mr. Within, what's truth to you now? What is truth? And I'll be like, my God, it is something that is uncreated. Everything that's created has loops infinitely. Have you noticed? Do you know, even though I'm not like someone who's like walking in like imagine I was like an explorer on a planet just recording recordings of my findings. I'm pretty much doing that on Earth. As a human being born on Earth, but assuming if I had landed on this planet and in some sense I was giving feedback. To be honest, my feedback would be this. Whoever you are, whatever human game you play that culture has designed, unless it takes you towards religion, it's going to be boring. Let me tell you why. Because it's ignoring the bigger game. So pretty much to be a human being, You have two options, I find. And this is the opinion of 1 in 8 billion. And believe me, I am telling you, I started off this lecture by saying all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. God knows that which I can never. I am limited to my imaginable findings to speak. But God moves the unimaginable. What does it mean to be in a world with a system admin? It means bravo. Round of applause for existence. We have a commander. You know, we have our original contact. How can I tell you? We have our comms. So as 8 billion souls on earth, who acknowledge the journey of all of our ancestors. In 2024, one human being with the online alias Mr.Within is suggesting to give the history book some flavor. That it is time to unify the species by a recognition that we are all singularians. Why? Because we choose to acknowledge single points of meaning. That means if you believe in truth, you believe in your truth, you're a singularian. Yo, somebody put an emoji, but I can't see it. What is it? Ah, it's hands. You know, guys, I thought I was destined to be, in some sense, like a high profile strategist in the history books, but I've realized what I am is that human being. Like, I totally understand Sun Tzu, the art of war, right? People are like, Mr. Within, you're saying you've had an experience and you believe in God now, and believing in God has made you understand the art of war. And I would say, yeah, because in the art of war, Sun Tzu spoke about something that only I truly understand. Generals were not normal human beings. The idea is that the general that aligned to heaven first won the battle. That means it wasn't just about like who was the smarter general. It was that there were so many uncontrollable events in the middle of the strategy of two generals' controllable events, right? That in some sense, the general that had in some sense a righteous position, right? Those aligned to God's will. Do you understand what I'm saying? This doesn't mean like extremism. This means that you as a human being are not just in an empty room. You think just at what the fuck are atoms doing here? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you think reality has become this sophisticated? Because atoms want to see intelligence. If an atom could talk, it would shout out, "Entertain me." Do you People think the proton, you know, the electron, neutron, all that shit's a gladiator, you know. People don't understand. The atom's like the emperor, like ancient Greece, like thumbs up, thumbs down. Guys, to be honest, let me tell you what shift in the structure of the psyche has become. So pretty much it's a different acknowledgement pattern. I'm pretty much saying God is uncreated. God creates the world. God creates the soul. The soul makes a mistake. From an act of sin, it falls. From greatness, it falls to from perfection, it falls to imperfection. When it falls to imperfection, it is being tested. Then in some sense, it has a chance to, in some sense, get closer to God or further away from God. But eventually, after the day of judgment, everything that came from the uncreated returns to the uncreated. I would call this the tier of theology, where that point of the tier shape is in some sense God, where reality came from the uncreated and it goes back. What do you know? Do you understand what that means? That means that we are the created masterpiece of the uncreated. It's like, yo man, it's like there's kids like, yo man, I wish my dad would say I'm proud of me. It's like, excuse me, you are a creation of the system admin. I think all human beings are like this. As time goes forth, you get to see different dimensions of your own character. And then you wonder why these dimensions are there. Why is there a dimension of incredible silliness, carelessness, nothing's important, God's got this? And then why is there suddenly a serious dimension of whoa, the system has to be advanced? In some sense it requires, in some sense, a solidified precision. My mind, and this was honestly, God bless my twin brother. He's the one who opened up science fiction. My first sci-fi book was a tribute to him. He's like a genius writer. I really, part of me, even I created this chess account called Sumus Strategus. Which means the greatest strategist in Latin. And I thought the greatest strategist was a human being that had seen so many parallel realities and variations of how civilization could occur that eventually the pathway it could take now would be clear. You see, it's strange. It's like we're given a body in a world, this part's simple, but we're given a mind that gives this meaning, but meaning isn't physical. Have you noticed? Imagine you saw somebody cry behind a glass window, right? And somebody you didn't know, and you'd be like, what does this mean? What is going on? And imagine they were crying because they couldn't open the door, and the door should have just been pulled instead of pushed. I'll tell you this. There's moments when I drive on the highway and both of my hands are on the steering wheel and my attention is on the road, and then suddenly one of my hands goes my right hand comes at the center of the steering wheel holding it. And then I feel like I'm holding, what's the term? The reins of a horse. Do you know what I'm saying? And I get this inner vision that I'm marching on a horse and there's an army behind me, right? But the issue is it's way more complex than that, because it's the responsibility of dealing with souls. And so a part of me was God bless. God knows way better than what I know. I'm just one human being, and to be honest, if my general opinion on myself was that at first I was like, man, it's a cruel world, and then I realized, no, it's not a cruel world. It's just an era where subconsciously the egoic force is reaching extremist frustration. What does this mean? This means it's time for 8 billion human beings to be like, all right, this one human being suggested that we all acknowledge a system admin. By the way, when this happens, this is the subtitle, Global Intelligence Interaction Levels. Intelligence interaction levels is a term I've brought for, that kind of, helps the freaking out atheist that doesn't know what to do with an empty world, right? In some sense, the suggestion that relax, think about the polar opposite. Think as if rather than it's pure emptiness, pure meaninglessness, think as if it's pure meaning. It's pure intelligence, pure fullness. You are in the sight of the greatest force. That means the best feeling you can have on earth is like you're on a training ground and the trainers are there watching. The God, as in some sense, the angels are moderating. But in some sense, beyond the angels, go directly to God. So this is the notion of shirk. That means don't worship others. Don't worship any form. Okay? Don't worship anything worldly. And don't worship yourself. And this is what God saved me from. God saved me from an obsession of self-forced continuity. It was like a part of me was destroying me because it was freaking out that the future was happening, right? So it was like, imagine, that thing where it's like if you're someone untrained, you shouldn't go save someone who's drowning, right? But someone who's trained knows how to like grab them from the back and kind of like, anchor them and kind of like take them to the, lifeguard shit. Excuse my language, lifeguard skills, right? So similar to that, it was like a part of me was like, holy shit, everybody I see who's acting cool, who's acting like they're this and that, we're all gonna die. There's levels to this game. There is so much to be done. We have been given minds that see more, and proof of that is a human being telling you and speaking about the idea of an advanced civilization. If you're a human being that you hear the word advanced civilization and you feel nothing, then I am not speaking to you. And I don't know if you're even human, right? But if you hear the concept word advanced civilization and you just feel a pulse, you feel goosebumps, this is where one human being is walking that way. Do you understand? And I don't have enough like fucking social skills to get people to gather around, but I know this is where everything should go. Why? Because the issue was we wanted the future, but we wanted it where? In a place system where God was the admin. So now we're like, we acknowledge the admin, and the admin is testing humanity, and it's testing how it responds to sin, and it's testing to see how man sees God. You see, there is a saying in the holy book, the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something fascinating. And excuse me if I'm not getting it accurately, but the idea, is something in these lines. And of course, please consult an authority on this. But this is the idea I remember, something that in some sense pierced my heart that I remember to speak about, right? And it was this notion that if everybody behaved perfectly, civilization would be wiped out by God so that there would be sinners asking for forgiveness. What does this mean? This means, whoa. We're here praying for material smooth passage to the other side, yet God is testing man to see, hey, in the testing zone, do you notice the Creator? And if you do, then life becomes service to the Creator. This means on all levels. Do you understand? That means it's kind of cool. when you step out of the ego of trying to be your own God the whole time. And people are like, Mr. Within, is this some are you teaching something? I'm like, no. I'm just a human being who's had a glimpse of the future behind in his inner sight, behind his eyes, and he's startled and he's started a podcast, and all that he's really saying is that, hey, the game is way more sophisticated than we thought. It's not like, what do we do on this stranded on a galactic island, in the middle of nowhere. It's not, because the conclusion of that, I wrote it in my science fiction. You know what it is? It's not even in my sci-fi. It's in the book Civilization 2.0. You know what the idea of it is? It's the idea that physically, if we infinitely continue, either we're going to go into techno hibernation, but most likely what's going to happen is that we're going to have advanced technology and AI go ahead and be thrown into outer space, going on and finding planets and habitabilizing them, right, without destroying planets and whatnot, right? Without destroying species. The most advanced technology is going to go ahead, and all human beings with all resources will just be tasked with having sex. I predict that in 10,000 years from now, we are overpopulating the whole universal sector, and at the same time, we're overpopulating the universal sector, and at the same time, the purpose of life is just sex. And I think that when I say this, all, Spanish and Italian folks are like, oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. I don't know. I'm being silly. Honestly, what I'd like to see is, I don't know. I hope to see it in my lifetime, where suddenly breaking news, so it's like all around the world, this one podcast lecture was heard, and children all around the world decided to assemble advanced teams of global communication. What does that mean? That means the smartest people, children of all nations, did not start to create a new government. They started to, in some sense, completely control the educational system. I shouldn't even say completely control the educational system. That shit's like too rebellious. Let's say it's like this. In earlier talks, I spoke about it, the one student mind. But pretty much, what is the idea? I have this theory that human beings, wherever they are living, whether their lives are imperfect or perfect, they will get bored. They will get bored of how life repeats itself. They're going to understand why novelty is important. They're going to also understand why the concept of God is important. They're going to notice, if you've been on this planet long enough, most likely you've seen some behind the scene kind of, it's like, some people just see coincidences. They're like, oh my God. And then some people see something else. So, what can one human being say? How to build an advanced civilization in the sight of God. First thing, we pray to God for guidance. There's a prayer as a Muslim, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. God, guide me to the straight path. What does this mean? This means system administrator, watch over me. So we, in some sense, acknowledge, honor the system admin the moment we wake up or before doing anything. As a Muslim, how you do this is you say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. We acknowledge the original source power. So we honor and acknowledge the system administrator the moment we've entered the conscious waking state of this existential system. Entering it conscious waking state means entering the experientially. So we have acknowledged our creator, now we are the created. So first we looked at what's important, God. Now the next thing we looked at after we looked at the creator, which we realize is a point that is uncreated beyond the world. So when we pray, when we bow, we are bowing to a power that is beyond any worldly force, good or evil. If you're afraid of evil, God is beyond the world. It's an authority beyond the world. God's decree is so powerful that even though as a Muslim, after Prophet Muhammad, right, no human being can get revelation, and in some sense only through dream states they get. And there's only angels and demons to some degree. But in the holy text, it has also been mentioned that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, chooses by his own decree to reveal to who he wants what he wants. That's the power of the system admin. That's the power of the system admin. So what I'm saying is anything is possible because the system admin is watching. And we just have to be conscious. And you know what it feels like, guys? It feels like, you know, it's so hilarious. When I became religious, I realized this. It feels like how I felt as a kid in grade 4 in school when there was a principal. And we had this principal in a gray suit named Mr. Chavushi, right? He wasn't Japanese, he was this Iranian guy, right? And he was gray, his hair was gray, his mustache was gray, he had a gray whistle, and it was like this gray guy with a white shirt, right? And his presence, he had a very kind presence, but he had a very strict presence at the same time. And everybody around him was polite, acted well, but around all the teachers, nobody cared. So it feels right now as someone who's noticed and acknowledged God, right? And I've shared in the previous lectures how the experience came about that I became religious. It feels like the authority figure is there. It feels like, you know, I wanted to be a general, but no. The general, the administrative power is there. I'm inside the system. The main point is to tell you to, go directly to the system admin. But once you've acknowledged the system admin, if you're still here or whatnot, the next action item would be, okay, what do we do as human beings? So 1, we praise our creator. 2, we praise our creator by looking at the creation and looking at how magnificent it is and realizing that God created man with that which is called aql, which is in Arabic, but it's also called intellect. And what is the value of the intellect? The value of the intellect is that just like the browsers of like an internet browser, just like you can open new tabs, Just like you can have multiple tabs open, just like you can just have one tab open, it works like that. Where we've been blessed by the Creator to be capable of lower scale creation. Do you understand? It's weird. It's like the higher self is completely capable of controlling its lower self, right? But its lower self is also being controlled by the world. So do you understand? It's like right after, like the Adam and Eve, like they bit the apple. It's like test failed. Right after we went into straight away the next test. It was like, yo, test failed. Okay, next test. And so what's the next test? I personally find it is one of the coolest things. So let's fathom that we just built the most physically advanced civilization, most advanced technologies, and we relaxed some sort of like long living biological race, and we were like, okay, the lifespan has changed to like 2,000 years, and like you have 1,000 years of youth or whatever. And then worst case scenario, death is not as bad anymore. You just close your eyes and you live out your last years of life in cyberspace in a younger body or something. You know what it feels like? Before, when I wanted to build an advanced civilization, it was just for the human race. I'll be honest, it wasn't even just for anyone alive right now. It was for like imagine you're a person who's considering having kids, and then you're like, what kind of world am I bringing my kids into? And then a part of you is so angry because you've lived 30 years of life. Sorry guys, they've brought these like they've brought these paper straws, like the freaking ice cap freezes inside them. Hold on. You know, somebody's gonna be like, Mr.Within, did you give up? And I'll be like, kinda. Let me tell you why. Because God knows better, and it makes sense. Guys, I've experienced when I say God, like you don't understand. People think it's just easy. For me, bowing the first time, I was in Dubai and my life was so problematic and I felt like I was destroying myself. And so I just found myself, and I have a knee problem, so I was in my bed and I just felt so just alone and trapped in a path of just self-worship, of worshiping my future self and having such far-fetched deep expectations of what has to happen, right? Aside from that, problems that I couldn't solve, problems that were beyond me, problems that were happening to others that I, in some sense. And for the first time, I prayed and I said, God, if you're there, please solve these problems. I don't know what to do. And just like a scared child who doesn't know what to do, I put my forehead on the ground, and that complex future self that was built up in all those talks, like a warrior that had trained for a battle, suddenly dropped his weapon. And so I renounced myself, and it was a moment where my body bowed, and then when my ego, my mind bowed, body was scared of that temporary outcome. Mind didn't know what to do with the infinite outcome. Both of them bowed, and the soul was left, and the soul, in some sense, cried as if this whole time it had missed its Lord. It had missed its creator. It's such a fascinating thing, because even if you were a king, the notion of God is like something that all creation bows to. It's the authority that unifies the human race. It's the hope that we know that this world will not entrance us. That the children of humanity will dodge the mistakes that we touched unnecessarily. You know what it is? You know how amazing the future generations are? The future generations are going to look at us and they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to go a different way. Oh, man. You know, a part of me can envision myself like in a parallel, lifetime. Imagine. I don't believe in that stuff anymore. But just speaking about it playfully, I can totally imagine in a parallel universe, right? I just focused on going a career in the educational system, and I could totally see myself being like having given the 10,000 talks and being like, if in a fictional context there was like a headmaster to a school of like wizardry and shit, right? Do you know what I mean? I'm not talking about Harry Potter and shit. That shit's bullshit. But maybe like more like the Mashi manga thing. I don't even know. But the idea is, I could totally see, like, you know what it is? Something about, it's as if something I know God has for some reason given at least me, one human being, it could, I think many, not just me, this vision of another way the world can happen. And what do we do with that? What do you do with that as a human being? If you ask Spider-Man, he's gonna be like, I don't know, man. Uncle Ben told me. You know what I'm gonna say. I would love to see the hilarious, silly, and funny efforts towards not globalization in the sense that we've defined it now. You know, in my science fiction, how I unified the human race? I created something called Noh, N-O-H. And it was called the Nation of Humanity. And it meant that all the nations that exist now were sub-nations of this one nation, governing nation, called the Nation of Humanity. And the Nation of Humanity didn't care about which nation you were from. It just cared about the human rights and the advancement of the human species and treating human civilization as if like, yo, man, that's not some human being. That's a freaking tourist in manifestation under the majesty of and the divine surveillance of a great creator. God is incredible. God is the original power. When global intelligent interaction levels arise, it would be a point where there would be no more preaching of God. Let me tell you why. Because everybody's intelligent interaction level will include a link and connection to that. So you might dislike a future technocratic surveillance state, but you're already inside a divine surveillance state and in a semi-natural surveillance state. A part of me feels like the world is bored. I feel everybody's bored. We're bored of the jersey we're wearing. We're bored of this human story. And it needs to change. And God truly knows what will happen. It's based on God's decree. So I'm in such an interesting position, because before I was like, yeah, this will happen. But now I am like, God knows. But to me, this is what I see so far. What I see so far is a human species that is pretty much like, okay, our biological evolution's pretty much kind of like stuck. So we're evolving through information, and the information age is behaviorally evolving us, but eventually the gap between the communication of human beings, like think about it, guys. Right now in 2024, I'm a human being who needs to speak, have this turn into like sound, and then this sound be recorded by this device, and then you hear this sound, and then you interpret this sound in accordance to the imagery of your own life so far you've accumulated. Do you understand? Finding God is like, or for me, finding Islam was like finding the only system after my philosophical conclusion that truth in the world cannot be beyond the world. God is real, ladies and gentlemen. We're inside an existential system. The existential system administrator exists, but the cool thing is you as an existential member exist. So you're existing here now. I'm a human being reminding you of that. But I'm also a human being reminding you that we need purity. We need, class. That means if you're someone right now in the worst situation of humanity, I don't want you to be sad or upset. I want you to get bored. People underestimate the power of boredom. When you get bored of nothing, you wonder if there's anything intelligence on this rock in the middle of nowhere. As you go search for intelligence, you see, okay, you yourself are an intelligent system. Others are an intelligent system. The reason I aligned to the idea of marriage is simply because I take the notion that let's say a beautiful woman who I would like to spend the rest of my life with is a woman who it takes a lifetime to know who she really is. So to me, the complexity of the human being has dimensions, like horizontal and vertical dimensions, outer dimensions and inner dimensions. It's just the value of the inner dimensions we care about. And to be honest, I feel so alone. I feel so alone. I've been acting it out throughout the years. You know why I feel alone? Because there's nobody out there who actually wants to talk about what's going on with the whole picture. It's like we're all somewhere and we're like, okay, let's just call it Earth. Ha 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 ha. Earth. You know, and the children are born. And where are we? You're on Earth, kid. Shut up and go to school. The kid's like, okay, ha 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 ha. And generational freaking ignorance. Nonsense. If an army of, the most advanced human beings came up to me and they're like, what should we do, Mr. Within? Live as if the greatest is watching. Live as if you are created by the greatest. Therefore, you have a great function. Now, do not belittle yourself. Do not shame yourself, but mistakes will be made, and the Creator chooses. That's the cool thing. When you're young, you just have a few things in your control, and you think that's what life is. As you get older, you see there is so many uncontrollable factors that when you see a 90-year-old old man, you're like, okay, holy shit, this is where everybody's going. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, while we're young and alive, let us speed up the pace. Let us unify under an invisible allegiance to a truth beyond the world. Let us care for humans. So the basic idea is, yo, I'm a human, whoa. And then you're like, yo, there's other humans, whoa. And then you're like, whoa, there's a world here, whoa. And then you're like, yo, God's watching all of us, whoa. And if this was a poem, it would be called the Yo-Wo poem. For me, you might not believe it, but if you ask me, if anybody, if I had kids right now, and they ask me, if let's say in a parallel life I have kids and they have, I don't know, parallel travel there, and they parallel time travel to here, and one of those kids of my parallel self says, hey, Uncle Parallel Self, Uncle Parallel Dad. What's the meaning of life? And I'd say, children, in this world of ours, it's to get 8 billion human beings to connect to a divine server. Once they're connected in that divine server, they only fear the admin. They don't fear the world the admin created. Once the attention is on the admin, this releases the fear that the species is going to get shackled in self-worship. I'll give you an example. If right now a super cool, super advanced like AI robot came and helped humanity, some people might worship that robot. If an alien landed and super helpful and blessed alien, people would worship that. If a time traveler came from the future, people would worship that. Right? If a human being demonstrated a level of skill that was so surpassed human level, people would worship that. If there was a superhero, people would worship that. Right? So the thing about this world is that you're kind of being tested. Hey, you're somewhere. But do you think this is it? And if the answer is no, then the system admin knows. You know, I will die one day. So will everybody. And as we grow old, we will wonder about all the things that could have happened. And all the force fields, subjective force fields that denied all the things that could have happened. You know, one sentence in Islam made me instantly just restored my honor. And it was this sentence, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds, not just one world. That sentence was so powerful that in that instant, my mind fathomed like this infinite parallel versions of myself, like all of them instantly in whatever world they were in, just stopping and bowing. Imagine infinite versions of yourself bowing to a singular creator in one instance. And it was a very beautiful moment. Because the ultimate path is a return. This young girl in an video I saw on YouTube about Muhammad Ali, this great boxer, this young girl asked him, Muhammad Ali, what are you going to do after you retire? And Muhammad Ali, he was such an elegant next level speaker. I can't duplicate his elegance. But he said something in the lines of, I have 21 years to prepare to meet God. And that was such an incredible statement. As if this soul has realized he reached the greatest position. He achieved greatness and legacy and all of that. And then they're like, what are you going to do after retire? He's like, I'm done with worldly affairs. I'm focusing on that which is coming. I'm focusing on that moment where the created, the soul, which is the secret of God. That means we've been designed to never be able to know ourselves completely. This is what it means to have a soul. So you relax. And God's greatness is like a river. We're all swimming, and we're all swimming the direction of the river. And let's say all the good people are swimming the direction of the river, and all the bad people are swimming against the river. And at the same time, right, those who are, closer, those who are like, have been blessed by, those who know are just looking at the good and evil people and being like, yo, guys, just relax. The evil people who are swimming against the river, wondering why chaos never leads to a creative outcome, constructive outcome. And those good people are swimming really hard, in towards where the river's going. It's as if like everybody relax, be still. And then you're going to realize the true presence of God. People are like, yo, man, I don't see God. There's no proof. Excuse me. That's how do you see God? Maybe it starts off by first being like, whoa, I'm in a world that's existing. I'm in a world that has shape. I'm somewhere at all. I'm existing in a place where even the most modern scientific minds are suggesting that if certain constants were off by a little bit, reality would be meaningless existentially, physically. So we are in a setting, in a reality, right? It's like that Vin Diesel Fast and Furious movie. Was it Fast and Furious or Triple X movie? Some shit, something like that, right? Where the guy was in like a fake diner and he suddenly realized it. Whoever you are, I think my task as someone who, if God willing, I am convinced. There's been things I've worked so hard for, you know, and there's so many things that I've worked so hard for and so many things that I've been ignorant about that I realize there's no way I can be aware of all my blind spots. So it was in some sense as if like, okay, system admin, you know what is deep down in my heart. If, oh system admin, if you may bless, how these lectures are heard by the human species. To be honest, it's just God. Because the thing is, it's more than this world. You know what that means? That means nothing was that convincing. To build an advanced civilization in the sight of God, to advance global intelligence interaction levels, means 8 billion human beings were not just freaking objects. They were these intelligent beings that were capable of noticing that they were inside an intelligent system, and were capable of noticing that this intelligent system had moderators, and were capable of noticing that the moderators had a singular admin, and were capable of noticing that by going directly to the admin, they bypassed the ignorance of the falsehood of moderation. So to be honest, guys, it's pretty much like this. You get to live as your higher self on this planet or your lower self. What does this mean? I'm not saying you're limited to this, but I'm saying the reason these pathways open up is because your lower self is based on you behaving in accordance to your desires. So when you actually bite into the fruit, you actually act on your desires, you will feel it instantly, that it's as if the soul's activated itself in the lower self. But let's say there's moments where you renounce. Let's say if you're purely disciplined. Let's say if you're someone who's pure. Let's say you're someone who you made a mistake and you tried to resolve it to the best of your ability, and then you quickly went to the system admin, God, and prayed and asked for forgiveness, and you're like, forgive me, I didn't know what to do. Guide me, show me the way, teach me. I have, I feel blessed to have, finally become a singularian. It's a singular truth. And it's way more energetically plausible to the human being. When I was a bit more secular, see, spirituality, if I was to define it for you, would just be advanced self-worship. I've changed. I've had such a switcheroo that my twin brother, my father, my friends, everybody around me is like, whoa. You know why I've had that switcheroo? Because I realized there is no such thing as being secular. The attention will always be on something. And if you reject the world, it's on yourself. If it's on yourself all the time, then you're worshiping yourself. So I was like, wait a minute. It's never about either there's no worship or worship. It's either you're worshiping yourself, you're worshiping others, or you're worshiping the world, or you're worshiping that which is beyond the world. 4 options, ladies and gentlemen. The last one is correct. Why? Because the worldly, it echoes to the mind is infinite. To the body, it's temporary. What can you do? The body's like, yo, you serious, man? I'm temporarily here, but you give me a mind that can envision infinitude, that can envision the future. How savage is that? And the soul's like, relax, body, relax, mind. It was never about just us. This might sound bizarre, but one of the most biggest advancements as a being I have had was to realize I am not the main character. God is. God is the main character. I thought I was the main character. You know, you don't know what it is. Like, you don't know what kind of, like, what sort of experiences I've had, right? There's been moments where I was like, man, why? I put so much effort. And then I realized this whole Mr. Within thing, this is what I realized in Dubai. I was subconsciously, believe it or not, I was doing it for fame. I was doing it for fame. Do you understand? Subconsciously. Subconsciously, I was doing it to be globally self-worshipped. Right? And then when I realized this, a part of my soul was like, before you didn't know, and that's how it happened, but now you know. And so I was like, okay, now that I know, I don't want people's attention to be on just me, or anything worldly. I'm going to point people to God first. So to me, I'm someone where if you have anything, I'd be like, go to God first, but my opinion then comes second. You understand what I'm saying? So I became humble. I realized I didn't create the world, so I don't know. But what I have control is in an ability to communicate, in an ability to physically move. As I've grown older, I've realized that traditional life makes sense. At the same time, when it comes to reality, I don't know. I'm that person who, I guess at this age, I look back and I'm like, man, my shine is kind of like, was limited me. But maybe it wasn't time. Maybe, speaking in front of millions, maybe that's been done before. Maybe I'm that person who, for people late at night in their balconies, just staring at the liminal late night, view of urbanization, like, there's so much more. A lot is possible. All right, guys, I'm going to go on Discord. Now, let me try to find the link. I'll be there if, I got work to do. I got to design some stuff on the computer. If there's anybody who lives in Toronto, give me a shout out. All right, let's see. Invite people. You know, guys, the thing is, what I'm trying to tell you is that when the notion comes that the end of life is not about dying, it's about meeting the Creator, then life becomes about like, whoa, we're not just gonna die. We're gonna go in front of the greatest position of being. It's magnificent. So, anyways, guys, check the description, and that's the end of the talk. All is well. May humanity be successful in building an advanced civilization in the sight of God. May God forgive the human species and bless it and guide it towards the straight path. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. That means don't worship yourself, don't worship others, don't worship anything worldly. If you bow to that which is beyond shape. Thank you for listening.